يلي بتجاوب على تشتتنا وعلى تفرقنا. مش قال إنه أمرهم شورى بينهم؟ هيدي الرسالة اللي بتفيد زعماء العالم الإسلامي، وبالنازل نزول للمجموعة هيدي تجتمع مع بعضها وتشتغل مع بعضها وتمارس الشورى. هيدي الرسالة اللي تتعلق بها المشكل يلي هو عدم الشعور بأننا موحدين، وعدم توحيد الغاية يلي من أساسها عم نجتمع.
Okay, let us,
يعني
Dr. Safi, let us speak in English because I don't know if everybody speak in Arabic, and
في حدا
yeah, I think
الدكتور
yeah,
سهيل
I
موجود.
think,
خلص
yeah.
الدكتور سهيل بيستلم الاجتماع الآن خلص.
السلام عليكم دكتور سهيل.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I will start today if I can. One buddy in Friday prayer asked you what is the mission. I just said that a few minutes ago. I understand the mission you always talk about is different from time to time. I understand from you the mission is the mission for the moment.
I asked that question and that wasn't my question, brother.
Oh, this is my question. No, this is my question.
Repeat. Okay.
No, not your question. No, sorry. Brother Safi, before you ask, first question come in the masjid, not your question.
Okay.
One guy was sitting in the front, in the middle. He asked him this question, I think. It's not you. You ask a different question.
طيب بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. هو يعني first of all the idea that Islam is a mission, it's still not widespread among Muslims. This idea, the very definition of Islam, before we talk what the mission is, the whole idea that Islam is a mission, it's a life mission.
Yes.
Majority of Muslims, if you ask them to define Islam, they will not mention it. They will tell you submission to Allah, which is true. They will tell you it's a way of life, which is true. They will tell you that there are a number of things that you need to do, which is the fara'id, and there are a number of things that you should avoid. And that's it. Yani vast majority of Muslims, and I mentioned one time, I said, if we in the masjid, we try this exercise, we distribute an index cards or piece of paper and say, how do you define Islam? You will find all kinds of definitions, and some people may even don't find anything to write because you cannot give that which you don't have if your knowledge of Islam is shaky or superficial. How can you define it? So first of all, we have to convince a person that Islam, when you become a Muslim, you commit and you dedicate yourself and your life to a life mission. And then you need to find out what is that mission. And because the Quran says that there is between you and Allah, there is a covenant, there is ahd, there is mithaq. الذين يوفون بعهد الله ولا ينقضون الميثاق. طيب, if you have such a contract that is signed between you and Allah, you'd better know what's in that contract so that you can honor it. It's like when you rent a place or when you enter into any deal, there is a contract and you need to know what is in the contract so that when you sign it, you honor it. All these ideas are not clear in the minds of Muslims. This idea that Islam is a life mission, Islam is a covenant, mithaq, ahd, between you and Allah. And normally, before you sign it, you should read it. Now, we have it upside down, which is that we became a Muslim before we know what Islam is. Why? Because we inherited. Now, we became a Muslim by inheritance, by it was passed on to us like other habits. It came with the territory. So we grow up in families, most of us, families where we find people praying, so we prayed. And that's, as I always say, it's an advantage and disadvantage at the same time. It's a blessing from Allah that you are born and raised in a Muslim family. But at the same time, unfortunately, that makes people take it for granted. They don't know because they never took that decision. It's not like the Prophet ﷺ when he was presenting Islam and people know what's in it, and then they decide to commit and to come from shirk and then come to Islam. So, and that's why I firmly believe that we need to reintroduce Islam, rediscover it and reintroduce. That you said before we talk about prayers and fasting or anything, because even from the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these things came late. And my understanding is that maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala delayed these things so that we don't define Islam as prayer and fasting. In 13 years in Mecca, there was no Ramadan, no Hajj, no Zakat, nothing. And even drinking was not forbidden in Mecca. So what we define today as Islam was not there in Mecca. So what was the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam preaching? He was preaching the true Islam, the essence, that commitment that you dedicate yourself and your life from now on, that you're going to stop living for yourself and you're going to start living for Allah. That's the true ubudiyah, to be a servant of Allah. It was not meant to be passive servant, that you just obey and worship. Servant means an advocate, soldier, meaning that you're going to execute the plan of Allah. You're going to do the work of Allah. That element was missing over the centuries, and we talked about this before. It was by design. Part of it by design, part of it because Muslims thought that freezing Islam is the best way to preserve it. That's bad. And second, because those dynasties, those who were in charge, they didn't want these essence of Islam, this sense of mission, this idea that maqasid, that Islam, there are ultimate purposes. So they sidelined, marginalized these things, and then they promoted fiqh al-ibadat and fiqh al-tahara and etc. and sponsored it. Why? Because that does not affect them. So that's why the work that is needed is huge, because you're talking about centuries of distorting Islam, taking its essence out and blowing out of proportion some elements. So to the point that people are ready to fight about hijab versus niqab. They are ready to fight about beard, how long. They are ready to fight about the pants, how long they should be. Ramadan, should we start with the moon sighting or calculations? All of these are minor. These are not, that's not the essence of the deen. We need to revive, first of all, the fact that Islam is a mission. And if somebody accepts this, then we can talk about what is that mission. Now, this mission, and in my book, I wrote a whole chapter about the mission of Islam, because it was described in Quran. You're right, brother Basim, is even in Quran, it was mentioned in different ways. There are some key terms that were used to describe and define the mission of Muslims. The more common among them are Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, Islah, أعمار هو الذي أنشأكم إلى الأرض واستعمركم فيها, standing out firmly for justice, كونوا قوامين بالقسط, خليفة, وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة. So the title of our job is to be the deputy of Allah or vicegerent of Allah on earth, to do his work. Allah is the owner, and he appointed us to be the managers for this universe. So that word Khalifa carries a sense of mission. So it was defined in a different ways, but if we want to find what is the common theme, is basically we go back to the Tazkiyah and Islah. The mission of Islam is for you to strive all your life to be all you can be, to be the best version of yourself, to keep learning and implementing, so that to improve your skills, your knowledge, your character, your worship, your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your roles as a spouse, your role as parents, knowing the reality in which you're operating, how this world around you function, both the physical world and the human world, understanding the system so that you can engage it. There is so much to learn, to be so that you will be on a path of continuous improvement, because the tazkiyah in Islam is defined as إبلاغ الشيء كماله. It's a strive for perfection. That's why it is a lifelong journey, because none of us is going to be perfect. We're going to just try to perfect what we do. And every now and then there will be something that needs to be fixed or improved. So Tazkiyah, the mission of Islam, is striving for perfection. That's a key. If Islam is a degree, then these are the courses that you need to take. One is Tazkiyah, and that requires a lot of learning, that requires studying the Quran, that requires learning about Allah, learning about the Prophet and his model, learning about this world, learning about the society, learning about yourself, your health, learning about spousal relationship, about parenting, about so much to learn. So in order to fulfill that part of the mission properly. And then there is the other part, which is Islah, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to have maximum contribution to the greater good, to make this world a better place. You need to figure out what is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to happen, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this world to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this world to be more just, more free, more secure, more peaceful, more prosperous. These are the ultimate goals of Islam, more virtues. And that becomes your job to do it. Wherever you are, الذين إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة وأمروا بالمعروف ونهوا عن المنكر. Wherever Allah describes the believer as the ones, wherever they settle, that's what they do. They come to society, they find something good, they preserve it, they promote it, they defend it. They find something bad, they try to work against it and try to fix it. That's Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, making this world a better place. It is defined today by the word common good or greater good. And it can be done only through civic engagement. So it is very safe to translate Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar to civic engagement. Whoever is not civically engaged is someone who has abandoned their mission in Islam. Because in our time, you cannot fulfill it except with civic engagement. Why? Because we are no longer in a society similar to the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Medina or Mecca. We are in a society that is much more structured. There are institutions. There is you have certain rights to engage the system. So there is no way you can fulfill Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar if you are not civically engaged. Civic engagement meaning you are volunteering your time, participating in charitable work, you are engaging your representatives on any issues that you are interested in. You vote, you follow up with your representative when they do something that you don't like because they're acting on your behalf. What is the democracy? Democracy is we cannot be 300 million sitting in one room, so we elect representative. but they are supposed to act on our behalf and execute our will. So when your representative takes a stand that you don't like, you should be quiet. You should pick a phone or an email and say, why did you vote this way? I don't like that vote, etc. So in voting, electing, following up and engaging public officials, also charitable work, public education. We forget that one of the key elements of civic engagement is public education. Why? Because you cannot win, you cannot advance your cause if you cannot convince the public to, because there is what they call the court of public opinion. And we have seen recently why, even though the change is not as we wanted, but we have seen some changes, at least in the discourse of many public officials here and in Europe. Why? It's because of the public opinion, because of those demonstrations. I mean, when the public opinion in the beginning, when they took the Israeli version completely, so the politicians were really very comfortable because the public was behind them. When the public start to discover the truth, the reality, and start to change their opinion, they put a lot of pressure on public officials, and you can see still there is no change in policies. That requires more work, but there are changes in the discourse. And if you continue the pressure, you're going to see some changes in policies. Maybe not 100%, maybe not everything that you ask for, but you're going to force public officials to change, because these people, they have career. They have political career, and they understand the language of numbers. So bottom line, mission of Islam is huge. It has different facets and aspects. It's a mission with goals. Maqasid, risala bi maqasid. Islam is risala bi maqasid, a mission with ultimate purposes. It requires work to understand it completely. Yes, it was defined in a simple terms, but of course it takes different shapes in different places. The mission of Islam is not going to be fulfilled in a country like Syria today in the same way like you do it in United States. Here you have a system, there is a constitution, you have the full rights, freedom of speeches. Over there is a dictatorship, etc. So it's going to take different shapes and different tools, but Muslims, their prime responsibility is to, one, study the Quran and the authentic Sunnah and contextualize them in our reality, and two, study the mission of Islam and translate it into a civic platform and advocate it. And if you want to add three, study the model of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam of building and leading a community and try to simulate it. Try to simulate it, because if you think about it, the first item we didn't do it, and we're not doing it, contextualizing Quran and the authentic Sunnah in your reality. That's your prime responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sent special messenger with a special message to their people. After Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised to preserve the text and assign us the task to keep it relevant. Which now we took the shortcut. Rather than doing that job, it's demanding. No, we are just relying on work that was done centuries ago. You took a book of Ibn Taymiyyah or Ibn Kathir and you translate it to English, and you try to teach people in the United States that material, which was developed in a very different context, very different time, very different culture, very different everything. So that's because we are lazy. We take the shortcut. No, we need to go back and study the Quran, and individually and collectively, and try to contextualize it in our reality. One. Second, mission of Islam. So guidance, and then the mission of Islam. Study it. This standing out for justice, Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, Khalifa, Shuhada, شهداء على الناس, شهداء لله, قوامين بالقسط. What is these? These terms have to be studied. And what are the maqasid of Islam? What is it that Islam came to achieve? This field has to be studied. And then every community in the world should translate it into a civic platform. This is what that's where we stand when it comes to this issue. Social justice, employment, taxes, whatever, any issues that is there being debated, we find out what Islam has to say about it, and we translate it into a civic platform, and we advocate that platform day in, day out. Number 3, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had a model, leadership model, community building model. He had a model of building and leading a community. We need to study that model. It's a model building a community that is mission-driven, has unity of purpose, building a community with true leadership, not the manager of Islamic Center or a president or khatib or imam. That's not leadership. Leadership is something else. True leadership, building a community with true leadership, a community that is mission-driven, building a community with true brotherhood, people who know each other and so close, connected to each other, and building a community that has, these are some of the elements that I dissected from the prophetic model, which is mission, leadership, brotherhood, and sisterhood, and then mentorship. That system of mentorship, that community is mentoring one another. Everybody has a mentor and everybody is mentoring others, because that can establish very strong connection, and that can allow any new member of the community to be quickly integrated. Why? Because as the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to do, he will assign a mentor for you. You come today to the community, he will assign you to someone who will bring you up to speed so that you will not slow down the community. And nowadays it is being implemented. And I know in university, when new faculty is hired, they assign a mentor, so that new person, all their questions, they will, rather than asking the whole group and slowing down everybody in every meeting, will be asking the mentor who was assigned. It's a model that the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam adopted, and it is now being adopted by more successful institutions and groups. So that's the work that needs to be done, and it was not done, and that's why we're going nowhere. If we have issues, if we are off target when it comes to the very definition of Islam, who is the Muslim? What does it mean to be a Muslim? And what is it that we stand for? What do we want to achieve on earth? Is it having a mosque and Jumu'ah and some services and some educational programs, and we are happy? Is this what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defined the community of believers? No. Community of believers in number of verses was defined by mission first. And in Quran, every word is there for a reason. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس, the first thing he mentioned, تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر, before Iman, and you believe it, before faith. You are the best community sent to humanity because you enjoin that which is good, or to enjoin that which is good and forbid that which is evil, and believe in Allah. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put that mission even before Iman, وَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ. And then in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it before Salah. وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. He put it before everything else. Believers, men and women, are allies of one another. Why they come together? To promote that which is good and forbid that which is evil, and then establish prayer. The problem with the question, brother Bassem, is that a lot of time people, and they found out that people will be asking questions and sometimes complaining, say, we need practical things. And then when you go practical, you don't get response. So it seems to me sometimes we are really looking for excuses more than anything else, because keep asking for it. We need practical solution. We need to do this. Can you, first of all, that question should not be asked, because you should be part of developing solutions, not waiting for a ready solution that is packaged already. Give me a solution. That's bad question to ask. And then a lot of time when you go practical, you don't get a lot of response.
Brother Safi, go about your question you asked.
Well, okay, thank you. My question to Dr. Suhail was very simple. He was speaking in English to a group of people that not all of them understand what mission means in English. I simply wanted him to say, mission is Risala. Every Rasul and Risala come from the same root. So Risala is Quranic. Risala is Islam. Risala is what every Muslim should have. That's all.
Yeah.
I wanted to reinforce what he's saying, but bring it, because it came to my attention that a lot of people are wondering, what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about something that you guys should, if you don't understand something, go to Google. Don't keep it in your mind weeks and weeks and weeks and then wait till the Imam explain it to you. Subhanallah. This is all I wanted to say.
Yeah, sorry, and I did not understand exactly the question. So
I should have discussed it with you before.
But that's good.
I'm the one who should be sorry.
No, that's a good point, because in Jum'ah, communication is one way. So the more feedback I get, the better, so that I pay attention to something that probably was not emphasized enough. So
as a strategist, I practice for teaching people what a Risala is, because every project, every business project start with a vision and a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have a project called Islam, and we decided to be Muslims, and we don't have a vision for where we're going, and we don't have a mission to explain how we intend to get there. So all we need to do is think about this and help whoever is promoting these ideas. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
على كل الأحوال, thank you very much, Dr. Suhail. You really trying to take us leaps ahead of where we are. We just need to be able to walk with you. And please don't go ahead of the people. Don't leave them behind. We need to move all together. And that's essential if we are to accomplish something. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Inshallah.
Dr. Suhail, most of the people, when they ask about what you mean with mission, they want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. In my understanding, if I live in Washington, D.C., my mission different than when I live in Fairfax County. Because in Washington, D.C., the crime rate is higher. My job there will be to reduce the crime rate. We don't have this problem in Fairfax County. Probably in Fairfax County, we have use of drugs more for our kids, our mission to reduce, this what I understood the mission. And still the people, they don't understand what you mean when you say mission.
Jazakallah khair. First of all, as I said, the main thing is to accept the concept. But you're right, because this mission takes different forms and shapes in different contexts. It's not required from every average Muslim to do that translation. That translation of the mission of Islam into civic platform, that's the role of leadership. That's the role of leadership to come to DC and say, okay, given the circumstances, our top priority should be to work against crimes, for example. Some people who live in a different suburb area where there are no crimes. then the mission will be translated differently. The civic platform will have different order of priorities. So you're right. It's not, I mean, it is expected from everybody to try to learn and to be engaged. You should not wait. But for community to have a civic platform with clear priorities, that's the role of leadership. That's a true leadership. That's the main thing they should do, is to studying the reality and studying the mission of Islam, and then translating that mission into very relevant civic platform to that particular reality that has, as you said, has steps and has priorities. But there are some general guidelines that everybody can apply anywhere. And that's usually what I focus on, because the level that you are talking about, that's a different level. That's a different level of details. But there are some general themes in the mission of Islam. For example, this tazkiyah process and learning. That's not different, DC, Fairfax, you are in Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, doesn't matter. Wherever you are, you should be in the business of learning and then implementing what you learn. Learning what? Learning about your deen, learning about your life, your learning about your health, learning about your roles as a spouse, as parent, etc. Learning about the system in wherever you are, in the country you are. Just try to go online or pick some basic information and understand what is the local government, what is the state government, what is federal, etc. What are my rights, my duties, as etc. So yes, if we had true leadership, they should help people by producing material that is more easy, more basic, more straightforward for people to learn these things. But if we don't have, you cannot wait. So this process of learning and trying to perfect everything you do, that has nothing to do with reality. I mean, there is little change from one reality to another, but every Muslim, wherever you are, you should be learning, reading, and then implement what you learn so that you can be a better version of yourself. That's, for example, something that is a common theme. Another common theme is wherever you are, if you have the ability to vote, if there is an election, etc., register to vote. If you can do your homework to learn about candidates so that you choose which one to vote for, or again, better if there is leadership who will produce some scorecards, study those candidates and say, these are the priorities for us as Muslims. And in those priorities, that's how much score we give to every candidate on family values, on education, on taxes, on whatever. So bottom line, the mission of Islam, there are some common themes that every Muslim should know and do. And there are some specifics that are special to that particular context. That when it comes to priority, okay, I want to be civically engaged. I'm going to register to vote. I'm going to engage my representatives, etc. But what are the priorities? That becomes specific. That's the second level of details. That requires also, in addition to priority, different people have different interests. I mean, fighting crimes can be priority in DC, but you can find a Muslim who is more like to be involved in environmental issues or on homelessness or whatever. So it's a combination between the two, between what is priority, what is more important, and also what is your interest. If we get majority of Muslims to be involved, then we will be everywhere, because every Muslim has different interests. Then we'll be with the Habitat for Humanity, we'll be serving food for the homeless and those who are hungry, and we'll be everywhere because different people have different interests. But it's a responsibility of leadership to fine-tune the civic platform and develop the set of priorities and try to direct Muslims or members of the community to focus more on what is priority.
Go ahead, Brother Ashraf, with your question.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جزاكم الله خير. جزاك الله خير دكتور سهيل. جزاك الله خير دكتور صافي. أنا عايز بس أعبر شوية على. I'm sorry, we're supposed to speak it in English?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to emphasize something that both Dr. Sohail and Dr. Safi are involved in. And let me explain. Okay, I want to emphasize when you say civic engagement, and you answered the question, you emphasized exactly what I would, what frustrates me. And that is that we have our Muslims who are civic minded, engaged in civics, and who are interested in aspects of the society that maybe the parents or grandparents were not interested in. They were coming here for economic reasons only, and so they isolated themselves. And so if you go to different parts of the country, like in 1968, when I first came here in Columbus, Ohio, we didn't have a mosque and didn't have 5 daily prayers. There was no Sunday school or Friday school, nothing. There was one other Muslim family, and he said, I think we can start by having Friday prayer on Sunday, and we can make Dhuhr prayer on Sunday 2 rak'at, and we can pray Friday prayer on Sunday instead of Friday. I think that's how we should establish our community here. And I was a child at the time, so I raised my hand and I said, I don't think that's possible. Now, I don't use that example to badmouth my uncle. He's not my uncle, my real uncle, but he's, my uncle. He was, at the time, he was elderly. May Allah give him mercy, inshallah. He's passed away since then. Now, I'm not trying to badmouth him. I'm just trying to say the types of things that come up. I now have a problem with some of the people that I have hold very dearly, love them very much in Islam. We went through summer camp together, went through winter camp together. I would get in my car at 16 years old and drive for 4 hours to go to Plainfield, Indiana to attend an Islamic camp. And I didn't know any other Muslims. There were no Muslims in Columbus, Ohio, my age. So the first time in my life, I get to see practicing Muslims. Some of those people are now civic engaged and civic minded and involved. And they say things like, we really should. And they say, I don't want to say what they say, but say something that's very, forgive me, but it's blasphemous in Islam. And it requires fiqh to explain it thoroughly. But I have to use an example, forgive me, but we should be more accepting, and we should fight for the equal rights of the LGBT community, and we have to allow them to practice their what they want. The privacy in their own house has nothing to do with us. And if they are Muslim, even though I would not want it for my son, it's perfectly okay. If my son wants to be a homosexual, I accept it fully. This is someone who is involved in the highest level. He's a lawyer. He's a powerful figure now. And he said that to me, and I put down the phone and I cried after I explained to him that something that you said, Dr. Sohail. You didn't say it in exactly the same way that I'm going to say it, but you meant the same thing. When you read the Quran, reading the Quran, because we are marketing, bombardment. I give us the same lecture 4 times a year in Qatar, and the lecture is called Airplanes, and it's about marketing, and it's about now we can travel. Now we don't have the definition of Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam. In the early 60s, if somebody would, for 1400 years, if some Muslim would dare to say, we will leave Dar al-Islam and go live in Dar al-Kufr, he's being blasphemous. This is absolutely outrageous and unacceptable that a Muslim would go live in Dar al-Kufr or Dar al-Harb. That means you are kafart. You are becoming a kafir. You can't do that. So in the 60s, we have airplanes, and so people start traveling, and MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., and the and the civil rights law of 65, it opened the doors of the old Ottoman Empire people. They were called the Eastern the Ottomans. We were called the Ottomans. People from the Ottoman Empire are allowed now to come in. We will treat them equally because of MLK, because of 1964 Civil Rights Act. My point is that it's exactly what you said, Dr. Suhail, and what Dr. Safi himself focuses on in his book, is that if you don't stay close to the Quran while you are involved in all of these actions outside your home, you will destroy yourself. Let me explain that in a different way. I said that in a harsh way. Let me be more gentle. Forgive me. If you don't read the Quran every single day, there is absolutely no substitute for sitting on the floor in the mosque and reading the Quran. There is no substitute for that whatsoever. And we need to emphasize, when we read the Quran, we're not putting our finger on the page and say, oh, I had an argument with somebody about a subject, and I have to look up the verse, that ayah that proves my point. He's using the Quran as a book of reference to make an argument, to discuss. He's not using the Quran as a source of ibadah. Reading the Quran is ibadah, just like your 5 daily prayers and just like your sunnah, just like growing your beard or anything else. And that's what we're missing out on, because now we have all these mushattat, all of these different ideas within people who are really talented, very, very talented people who are at the highest level, and who scares me to death, because they're the ones that people are going to listen to. A 10-year-old will listen to him before he will listen to somebody who goes to the mosque and is highly emotional. That's not, he's going to listen to the person who is successful. Look, that guy has a nice car, he's got a nice house, he works for the office of the president or the vice president. He's my role model, not the imam of the mosque who doesn't speak English or barely speaks English. When Napoleon Bonaparte first brought the printing press to Egypt in the 1700s, I'm sorry, I won't do this too much. That's enough. I apologize. I've taken too much time. Thank you. Jazakallah khair to both of you, all of you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair. I mean, you raised very good points, several of them actually. Let me start with the end. Now we have been saying time and again that your relationship with the Quran, it's the strongest indication of your relationship with Allah, together with prayer, salah, and Quran. Tells you exactly how strong is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because as one of the scholars said, if you want to talk to Allah, pray. If you want Allah to talk to you, then read the Quran. But we don't want people to continue just reading the Quran or memorizing the Quran or listening to the Quran or learning how to read the Quran, tajweed. What we want and we need badly is to study the Quran, because that's what is missing. We have a lot of Quran schools across the world and a lot of Quran programs, but they are mostly reading, memorizing, listening, and learning tajweed. Studying the Quran is missing. So to the point that you can get someone who memorized the Quran and recited and maybe lead Taraweeh, but they don't know what they're reading. They have so that's not what we want. Quran is a book of guidance. It's not a book of barakah. It's not like how many pages I read so that how many rewards I'm going to get. It's what you get out of the reading, because Quran is a text and a message. There is a text that you read, there is a message that you extract. And that requires contemplation and reflection. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِيَدَّبَّرُوا آيَاتِهِ. Not just to read it, to reflect and contemplate on those verses. And contemplate for what? To implement. Because it's a book of guidance. You read it looking for directions. You know, like a GPS gives you direction to your destination. In this case, Quran gives you direction to heaven and to Ridwanullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَهْدِ بِهِ اللَّهُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ رِضْوَانَهُ. That this Quran guides those who are pursuing Ridwanullah, or the good pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, studying the Quran is what needs to be revived. And everybody should realize that, all of us, we should realize that every Muslim can and should study and understand the Quran. Because unfortunately, we repeated the mistake of other communities before us, which we created the clergy. And now majority of Muslims, they are under the impression that Quran is only for scholars and to understand, not for me. That's not true. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So this is what we need to promote. It's a movement, should be like a movement, encouraging people individually and collectively to embark on studying the Quran for life. If you don't understand a word, look it up. There are tafsir them online. You can find them. Ask someone who may have more knowledge. But you should be studying the Quran, as I mentioned this number of times, the same way, at least the same way like you studied the textbook in college. When you are assigned the textbook in a course, you study it from start to finish. That's what we need to do for the Quran. So now for civic engagement, now we don't have control on people. Now we need to promote civic engagement, but there will be always members of the community who will take stand that we don't like or we don't agree with. That should not discourage us. It's another reason. It should be another reason for Muslims to be engaged and to be involved, because we don't want to leave the field for people who may misrepresent Islam or the Islamic agenda or the Islamic stand. So Islam eliminated all possible reasons or excuses for anyone not to be civically engaged. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned this idea of ship, people on board of a ship. I understand that hadith, that the ship is the country in which you are living. And Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says there are people who are on the upper deck of the upper deck and people who are on the lower deck. And the people on the lower deck, every time they need water, they go. So they said, why we are bothering them? Let's dig a hole and get the water from the sea directly. And it's an amazing hadith. And the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, if they let them do it, then everybody will sink. That's the most powerful hadith I find for civic engagement. If you think that you're going to be safe, so that drugs and crimes and the injustice in the society is not going to affect you because you are doing okay and you are isolated and you are from home to masjid to work, and you are not, if you think this is going to protect you and protect your family, you're going to be like the people who are on the upper deck, who say, let them do it, we are safe here. So another hadith, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Jibreel to punish a town, and Jibreel found somebody who was worshipping day and night, and he didn't know what to do, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to start with him because he did not care about what's going on around him. فَإِنَّ وَجْهَهُ لَمْ يَتَمَعَّرْ فِيَ قَطْ, meaning he did not have any reaction to all the mischief and injustice that is happening around him. So even spending your time praying was not an excuse, a valid excuse not to be engaged in promoting ma'ruf and working against munkar. So it's, I mean, it cannot be more than that. It cannot be more emphasized than this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defined this community with this mission. This mission cannot be achieved nowadays except through civic engagement. So civic engagement becomes our mission. And there is no way you can fulfill the mission of Islam without civic engagement. But again, our definition of Islam until now puts civic engagement, until very recently we were debating whether this halal or haram, voting and electing and etc. But that's another story. But now, yeah, it's okay, but it is luxury. It's like bonus points. It's like you're taking a test. You can get 100. but then there are some bonus questions. If you want to do them, you can get extra points. Until now, that's the understanding in our community. For those who no longer discuss debate whether it is halal or haram, they are say, yeah, it's something good to do. It's like a hobby. No, it's not. It's the heart of your deen. It's the heart of Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold you accountable. And if you're going to come on the day of judgment and say, oh Allah, I was praying and I was fasting and I was etc., but I chose not to be involved, it's not going to be accepted, because we have seen it in the hadith. There was someone who was doing this and he was not accepted. So it is really long overdue that we return things, the pyramid, which was turned upside down, to put it back, that Islam is essentially a life mission. It is about being the best version of yourself and making this world a better place for everybody. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prescribed sha'air to strengthen us, to strengthen that our iman and to maintain it, and to strengthen us in fulfilling our mission. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made things forbidden because they are harmful and they are a distraction. So he wants you to be focused on your mission, wants you to be happy on earth, wants you to be successful. So he has forbidden things that are harmful for you. And we know everything that Allah has forbidden is very destructive, very harmful to the society. Look at alcohol. What is it doing to the societies and to the families and to the accident and you name it, and to the crimes, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because out of his mercy and love for us, he assigned us those prayers and fasts, etc., because these are what is going to maintain your iman and keep that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because which is the foundation of our deen. This is the way to express your gratitude to Allah. So he prescribed those things, and then he has forbidden other things because they are harmful, they will make you unhappy, and they will destroy you. But at the end of the day, the essence of our deen is that dedication and commitment to that mission. And these are things that Allah has prescribed or forbidden for you to succeed in this life and succeed in fulfilling your mission. Now we took that mission out, and then we start defining Islam as just list of rituals and list of things that are forbidden. It's like you took the engine out of the car, and then you are happy that the car is useless. If you take the engine out, it's useless. The heart of our deen is that commitment to that mission and to those ultimate purposes or maqasid of Islam.
If nobody has any follow-up,
Actually, I do, Bassem.
Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
This is really great conversation, and it's like, as usual, thank you so much for everybody's input and background. I just feel like there is like an element missing to respond to Bassem's question, which was from Bassem had a question in the beginning, which is a really interesting question, but he raises the questions like almost like every meeting in the last 6 weeks. And today he mentioned it like it was a discussion among different, among people in the mosque from different countries, Muslim countries, Syrians, Sudanese, China, whatever. So the question was about like why Palestine and not all of the other countries, or not the other countries. Why we're not talking about the other countries? And since we have some time, I would appreciate it like if you address it, because I really think it's relative to what we're talking about now. It's like where you're from, your role, and we shouldn't take things, and especially with what's happening, as it's a normal thing. Nothing is about the number. It's like how many people is going to be there. It's like, should we wait for another 10,000 to be okay for us to discuss the Palestinian issue or the Syrian issue or the Sudani issue? we should be very sensitive when we talk about like the numbers, and because this is what the Western countries, the criminals, the people who try to control us, it try to reflect things. It's like it's a number thing. I I just feel like it's frustrating that even among us as a smaller group, that we still continue to talk about this, and without realizing, with all of what we discussed today about the mission, about what Islam is about, about our rule, about how to be civically engaged, and we still continue to raise questions like why we're talking about the Palestinian issue, or why we're talking about the Syrian issue, and why we didn't talk about the Sudani issue. It's like there is a lot of Sudanese been killed. So it would be it is really an interesting question, but it's a frustrating question that we keep raising it, and it should be clear from this discussion that we should differentiate between our rule, the different situations, and not differentiate between the number. It's like not to talk about it like, oh, we're gonna start talking about the Sudani issue after they reach 10,000 people dead, or 20,000 people, or 30,000. And in China, because they have more people, we talk about 100,000 people. It's like we need to be sensitive toward even asking the question. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like I really would appreciate if we can discuss about this and how Islam look at it. And what is it's like the Jerusalem issue, the Palestinian issue is a little bit more sensitive towards, it's like it's even closer to Islam issue, to religion issue, if we want to take it that way as well. So it just seems like to me, and I'm trying like not to be even just because I'm a Palestinian. No, I care about the Syrians the way I care about the Sudanese, the way I care about any Muslim in any piece of, anywhere in the world, the way I care about them in here. And there is some issues that we need to be engaged to, but we need to be sensitive, and we need to be smart about how to respond to those questions, and to be sensitive about how to ask those questions. Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Just quick remark about, we should not only limit ourselves to be sensitive to only when Muslims are involved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assigned us the task to establish justice for everybody. So if there is anybody who comes under injustice, we should be sensitive. We should be sensitive for human life, Muslims or non-Muslim. So we need really to emphasize this universal dimension of Islam, or a human dimension, that it's not only when Muslims are involved or when Muslims are victims that we take the issue seriously. We should be much more than that. We should be everything that is happening, we find out what Islam has to say about it. We take that stand, even if the transgressor is a Muslim and the victim is non-Muslim. We should only have one standard. I know that you didn't mean it. I just want to emphasize it. Now, this Jumu'ah, I suggest something very simple, very practical, because we can sit down and talk about every issue like we do all the time. Now, when we get together, that's what we do. And nowadays, even we don't need to get together on social media. That's what we do. So we open the Palestinian issue, we talk about it, we watch, spend several hours watching news, following social media, and then when we get together, we talk about it. We talk in either describing what's going on and complaining. Usually it's between description and complaining and blaming others as if we have no responsibility. Most of our gatherings, if you think about it, next time you are in a gathering, please pay attention. You will find that people will spend hours describing, complaining, and blaming the issue. But they never ask themselves the tough questions: why this is happening? What can we do about it? And I always recommend for every one of us, you find yourself in any gathering, please put these questions on the table. Try to steer the discussion into, we have been talking about this for so long. Let's move. Why this is happening? What can we do about it? So I suggested something practical. Believe me, if we implement it, we will not need to talk about issues, because now we have opportunity to act. And when you can act, there is no need to talk. What was the suggestion? Very simple. I said, the reason our activism is not producing results, because number one, it's seasonal. It comes and goes. We get involved when there is an election or when there is a crisis, and then we go to sleep. So seasonal, not consistent, one. Number two, it's elitist, not grassroots. We have few people who are active in a mosque, but the majority, they do nothing. They're not involved. They're spectator. And three, we get involved in issue without an agenda, without clear demands. So that's why when there is a crisis like one in Palestine or in Syria, anywhere, we usually, when we do demonstrations, we feel good. That's it. We did our part. Why? Because we are yet to learn to be driven by an agenda and by demands. If you want ceasefire, then you should not stop working until you get ceasefire. Having one demonstrations or two is good. That can bring you some changes in the discourse of some president or some public officials. But as long as you did not achieve your goal, you should not stop. And that applies to every case. So the practical suggestion was the following. I said, before the practical suggestion, I said, the reason why public officials, they don't take Muslim organizations seriously and Muslim leaders, because they know they represent nobody. So someone, Muslim organization asks to meet a congressman or a senator, they know that they don't represent anybody. So they listen to them, they counsel them. I have seen these meetings, they counsel them. Basically, it becomes like a session of counseling. Okay, vent out your anger. Okay, well, we'll do our best. And then they forget about it because there are no consequences. So the practical suggestion was, if we start from our masjid, and we can start from this group, we need to develop a list of people who will give their email and their phone number, but they pledge, they commit that when you get a call to act, you act immediately. It's not like you see that email, you don't even open it, or you open it and then you ignore it, or you open it and read it and say, okay, I will come back to it later, now I'm busy. We need a number of people who will commit. Talk to your representative about Gaza, talk to your representative immediately, so that we know that in Shirley Gate, we have 50 or 100 people that are on that list who are going to respond. So if I, community leader, I send the message, I know that 90 out of those 100 people responded. So if after that I can call a congressman or a senator, and they said, we want to meet with the senator or the congressman about this issue, I know that this public official have received already all those emails and calls, and believe me, they will give you an appointment on the same day, and they will listen to you. They will take you seriously. Especially, I said we can start it in one masjid, and then we can franchise it in other mosques, and then in other cities, and then in other states, and then we will have, rather than every Muslim organization sends those mass emails that very few people will open and very few people will act, and the organization has no clue. Now we take our activism to a higher level, that when we communicate with public officials, we know that their phones and their emails were flooded already by hundreds of thousands. If we do it nationwide, there are thousands, or even if you have hundreds, that can make big difference. But right now, believe me, if we do some statistics, you will find that in every mosque, there are only 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 people who respond to those emails. And that's why we're going nowhere. I'd rather send an email to 50 people knowing that 40 or 45 of them will respond, or all of them will respond, rather than sending 1,000 email and have no clue who is going to respond or how many.
جزاك الله كل خير دكتور سهيل.
حياك.
Usually in winter we reduce it to 1 hour, you know, and
خير.
so we can catch to pray ظهر.
خير.
جزاك الله كل خير, and we'll see you next Sunday إن شاء الله at noon.
إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم.
سلام.
السلام عليكم.